President of the Alberta Teachers Association. Jason was re-elected as president in 2025 following many years of service to educators as a classroom English and drama teacher, a district representative, vice president, and now president of the Alberta Teachers Association. Throughout that time, he has been deeply involved in bargaining, strategic planning, and advocacy for public education, always grounded in the lived experience of members and classrooms. We're especially grateful to have Jason with us today as he speaks to us about the ATA's recent job action. We look forward to hearing about the fight Alberta teachers took on against a hostile government. And Jason, I can tell you, having sat in dozens of executive and council meetings so far this year, the fight that you and your members had last fall is probably the topic that comes up the most, especially as we ponder where we're headed as our contracts are set to expire August the 31st. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Alberta Teachers Association President Jason Schilling.
Well, good. I'm just going to adjust myself here. Everybody can hear me okay? I got my clicker. We're good to go. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for having me here today. I very much appreciate the fact that you invited me out here and wanting to hear a little bit about the experience that we just had in Alberta. I'm going to sort of break it up into a couple spots, and I will go through that in just a couple moments. First of all, I want to give thanks to the executive of OSSTF for inviting me out here, to staff who've been very gracious throughout the day to make sure that I had everything I need. I even have 2 name tags, so that's pretty awesome. And I also want to take a moment to just offer my condolences on the passing of Joel. I know that it's been significant and it's been hard to deal with, and so just my condolences on that, because it's a profound loss. So my sympathies on that as well. So my plan here is to go through kind of what led up to 2025, what happened in the fall of 2025, and a little bit of the aftermath. And then if I have time, I did the classic teacher thing. I have 4,700 slides in 40 minutes, so I'll try to fire through some things really quickly. A little bit about me. I am a high school English and drama teacher. I worked at Kate Andrews High School in Coaldale, just outside of Lethbridge. I taught at this school in particular for 17 years. And so when I left the school in 2019 to start this role as president, I've never cried so much in my life, because you build relationships with students and colleagues, ones who you've become your family, ones who you kind of want to shove into the photocopier once in a while, which I think was me sometimes, but also the community as well. And I felt like I really grew into my own as a teacher at that school. And unfortunately, that school is no more. And so once I'm done this role, I'm not quite sure where I'll go after that. But that's a little bit about me. I've been president since 2019. Prior to that, I was vice president, and then a district representative on provincial executive council prior to that. And before that, I was local president. So I've always been involved with the association at some form or manner throughout my career. I'm just going to skip that, but you might have seen my perm picture there. I did survive the great perm fiasco of the 80s. Tony Home perm. There we go. So this is a little bit about the ATA, in case you're not aware. Very similar to OSSTF and other member organizations across Canada. This is Provincial Executive Council, and they're the governing body of the association. Everybody that you see on screen there, except for myself standing there in the middle and just to my immediate left or right, is Greg Jeffrey. He's the past president. He is retired. But every one of our members of Provincial Executive Council are teachers. They have half-time release to do their association work, but they're active in their classrooms. And so they are high school teachers, elementary school teachers, administrators. They work in online situations. One of my colleagues works with medically fragile students, and so she is often teaching in a hospital, or she's at home doing home visits with students like that as well. It's important that we have our members of council to be active within our schools so that they can speak with authority when we talk about issues around bargaining, or with doing other kind of advocacy work, or working with elected folks in the province. I'm the only one with full-time release, and I'm just on leave from my district right now as we do that. A couple other things about the association, because we're a little bit structured differently than you guys are as well. I know that you represent education workers across the spectrum in public education here. We represent Catholic, public, and Francophone teachers. We have 51,000 members. And we are also, what else did I write down? We also represent administrators as well. So they're part of our union. They're not separate from our union as well, because other ones do have that, such as BC. I also would say as well, one of the things that makes us different than some other member organizations across Canada is that we're nonpartisan. And so we don't support political parties. We don't donate to political parties. We don't, as I like to say, we're equal irritants for whoever is in government. And right now we are such an irritant to the UCP because, quite frankly, they deserve it. So, yeah. I know we were debating the other day, who is it worse, Smith or Ford? And I was like, oh, I don't know. So I think we're winning, which is quite honestly not something I want to win at. I'm just going to be quite honest with you on that one. So, okay, so what led up to 2025? Well, we did quite a bit of work in two folds. We did a lot of public-facing work with media, campaigns, but we also did a lot of work with our membership as well. One of the sad facts about teaching in Alberta is that we're the least funded school jurisdiction in terms of boards having monies for operations and instructional grants in Canada. And we have been for a decade. And that decade of systemic underfunding has created the conditions that led up to the strike in 2025. So chronically, we've been the least funded year after year after year. So we took that notion and we put it into a commercial. I don't have the audio commercial here because I still call this a PowerPoint and not a slide deck like the cool kids. But our commercial that we put out about a year and a half ago, about almost 2 years before we got into the strike action, was called The Least. And so people were able to see this commercial. It was very simple. It was just people going, the least, and it caught like wildfire. And soon other people were using our words and our messaging in their talking points as well. So we put together these graphics. We created a website at the time called stoptheexcuses.ca, and it just took people where we could sign up to get emails from the association. We were able to build a list of about 100,000 people at that time. And it was teachers, parents, community members, people who cared about public education could sign up for this, and the website would then push things out to members. Like for example, this QR code won't work, don't try it. But we would say, okay, class sizes are an issue, create this graphic, share it on your social media, tag the association, and let's flood the social media world out there, the interwebs, if you will. So teachers were given things to do, parents were given things to do, so we had a challenge at this point with our locals that they would have an ATA meeting in every school. Right? Because one of our challenges, like any union or any kind of federation, is engagement of members. How do we get members engaged in the work that we need them to do in order to move the needle on our issues? And this has always been a challenge. Every union I meet with, I like to call it Union Fight Club in Alberta, but I meet with other union presidents. We're not allowed to talk about it because that's the first rule of Union Fight Club. But we talk about this grind of getting your members engaged is something that everybody was talking about. So we challenged our members and our local presidents to have a meeting at every school to get members engaged. We created scripts for them. One was on class size, one was on classroom conditions, just to sort of help have a conversation, because some of our members are new. Some of them have never had a union-style conversation in their building before to talk about their working conditions, and it was important to get them used to that. On top of that, we created these message guides for members, but also for members of the public as well, and parents especially. We worked on building that relationship with our School Councils Association as well, so that they had these message guides to help them have these conversations in their schools. So we said, you know what? Stories are really important. I can talk facts and figures all day, but when I sat down with the Minister of Education the first time, I told her about the kids in my class who were homeless, who didn't have the resources that they needed, who were crying when I left the school, not because I'm such a great teacher, but because my classroom was their safe space and they weren't sure what that was going to be like afterwards. Connect, contrast, solve. Those were the 3 steps that we kept saying to people. Connect with them on a story, contrast with what's going on, and then give a solution. right? I always say to people, I'm the president of the ATM, not the president of the complaint department. So I always like to know what the solution is afterwards. So, and look, we tried to fix this slide 14 times yesterday and it's still wrong. But anyways, just little sidebar behind the scenes there for you. We also created a whole bunch of graphics as we're leading up to the strike in 2025. Things that we're talking about, kids can't wait, different hashtags. A lot of you can see this was a very yellow kind of campaign with Stop the Excuses, but we wanted it to make sure that it focused on not only our classroom conditions, our working conditions, our students' learning conditions, but wages as well. Because wages was a factor for our members going into the bargaining round. And it was quite important that, you have the same thing here when it comes to looking at teacher retention and recruitment issues. I mean, by just a quick show of hands, how many of you have substitute issues getting substitute teachers in your schools? I mean, it's rampant in Alberta. We have lots of that going on right now. So this was all of the buildup up towards the strike. And then as we were doing polling as well, we shared this with our members leading forward to it, because really it was about organizing, mobilizing. So 91% of the teachers in our public said they trust teachers themselves about contract negotiations. And that was really to build up the fortitude of our members to say the public trusts you when it comes to talking about education. They don't necessarily trust the union, but they trust individual teachers. So build on that. Use that as capital as you're moving forward into your conversations. And then you could see the stats there. The public believed that teachers deserved a salary increase. And then they talked about, class sizes being too big. So as we got into central table bargaining, and our bargaining, I'm not sure, it might be a little bit different than what you have here. But we have a central table, and then once central table bargaining is done, then we go to local bargaining. So we have 55 locals. They would bargain separately after the central table is finished. Central table bargaining, of course, failed. We came to an impasse at the end of August in 2025. We had mediators' recommendations that council put out to their membership that were rejected in May. We had a strike vote that was done in June, the first week of June, and 94% of teachers voted in favor of strike action. And that was a large number, especially considering that the association doesn't do strike pay. So teachers were willing to take this risk, this chance, knowing that they were putting it all on the line. Now, I'll tell you, some of our members were not happy about the strike pay thing, but we did let them know. And this a little bit is the central table bargaining model is something that is relatively new to us. We've never had a provincial strike like this before where everybody was out. Before, when we've had other strikes, members were still working, paying into the special emergency fund, which would pay out strike pay. So this is a conversation we have to have as an association about what will that look like moving forward for next time around. And we'll do those conversations as well. So when we got into the impasse, we decided that we needed to use our strike vote that we had. It was going to run out. We have 120 days for that. So we made the announcement, which was a little bit unprecedented in Alberta, that we gave basically the public, the parents, 3 weeks notice. Instead of 72 hours notice, we gave them 3 weeks notice of when we would go on strike. If negotiations failed to come to a settlement, then we would be going on strike. And it didn't happen. And this was October 5th, World Teachers Day. So the one photo on the left is Edmonton, the other one is Calgary. We had rallies that day. This was a Sunday. We went on strike on the Monday. The Edmonton picture, you can't quite tell it, but there's about 25,000 people there. Right? Calgary had about 6,000 people there. Right? And the really key, thanks, I didn't organize it, but I'll take the applause. Don't tell the people in Alberta. Anyways, oh, now I lost my train of thought. It's being smart aleck. That's what I get. This is teachers, parents, kids, students, community members, all coming out to support public education, to send a message to the government that being the least funded is not acceptable anymore. And they came out in droves. And on October 6th, 51,000 teachers went on strike, and it's the largest strike action in Alberta's history. And teachers did that. And I think that's pretty awesome. Now, one of the things that we didn't do is that we had to set up, we had a strike action, central strike advisory council. And one of the things that they advised is that picketing wasn't necessarily something that we were going to do, because you got to picket in labor code laws in Alberta, you got to picket at your work site. And some of our sites have like 4 teachers in the middle of rural Alberta, and they're like, we're not picketing at that school so that our neighbors can throw eggs at us while we're out there. So we did rallies, demonstrations, and boy, did our members show up. Across the province, in small towns, big cities, small cities, members had rallies. So for instance, the one there in Medicine Hat, which is in southern Alberta, is a small agricultural city down in the southeast corner of the province. That is the largest rally that city has ever seen, of about 1,300 people who showed up that day. Right? Pretty cool. Fort McMurray I always like to add numbers, so it's probably about 700, but we'll say about 1,200 people showed up that day. And it was pretty awesome too, because they're a fairly conservative area of the province, but they had tons of people who showed up for their rallies. Lethbridge, Tabor, down in the southern Alberta part also had rallies as well. Throughout all of this, of course, and I see you guys in the sea of red. It's wonderful. I love seeing it. We kept doing the Red for Ed. It was one of the things that we did throughout the strike. Leading up to the strike, it became a bit of a structure test for us at schools. So it was Red for Ed every Friday. For Fridays, we're Red for Ed. How many people on your staff are wearing red? Can you talk to those folks who aren't wearing red? Why not? Well, in sort of doing that work as well. So did a lot of media, a lot of news coverage as well. It was the #1 story in Alberta leading up to the strike. I was a little bit aghast to find out that our press conferences around the strike were being televised nationally, which I didn't realize it, or I would have, wore a nicer tie that day, but whatever, it is what it is. Lots of support across the country. And we heard it and we felt it, and OSSTF were fantastic in terms of sending messages of support from not only just individually, but from as an association, as a federation as well. I just captured a couple of pictures of some of the folks out there who were showing that solidarity. And it was really important to see this, because when you're in the strike, you're so much in the moment. Right? You can't see the forest through the trees. Like you're just running day after day after day, 14, 15, 16 hours a day. And, you're getting messages from members that are supportive and messages from members that are not. And sometimes it's hard not to see the support out there. And these messages that often came at a really great time, because it made me lift my head up and go, oh, we're not alone in this fight. People across this country care about this. Then unfortunately, October 27th came by. So at this point, we were 16 instructional days on strike, 22 calendar days. Government had indicated that they were going to order us back to work, which we knew in our scenario planning was one of the options that could happen. Government, unfortunately, and to their great shame, used the notwithstanding clause to order teachers back to work. Within the bill, it is a huge amount of fines individually for the association, collectively would amount to about $27 million a day if we were to defy. They passed this in the legislature, and I'm not sure if Doug Ford does this, and if it's done in Alberta, unfortunately it might make its way east. They evoked closure on this debate. So Bill 2, as it was called, the Back to School Act, was tabled at 6 p.m. on Monday, October 27th, received royal assent by 2 a.m., which meant the strike was effectively over at that point. Yeah, they closed, they only allowed an hour's debate for each stage of it to go through the legislature. And this was me outside the steps, and quite honestly, I was so enraged at that point, I have absolutely no idea what I said during that press scrum. I rewatched it the other day, and I was like, well, me and my double chin were real mad that day, right? My friend sent me a text. They're like, oh, we watched your press conference. You were pissed. And I was like, yeah, rightfully so. Because what they did effectively was strip teachers of their charter rights. So as I stand here in front of you as a teacher from Alberta, I do not have the same human rights as you do. And teachers, shame, yeah, definitely. And this is, I'm going to talk a little bit about the legal case here in just a moment, but I'm also keeping my eye on the time to make sure I don't take up too much of your time. But this is a wound for our membership that they feel deeply. is this bill, this Act 2, the notwithstanding clause, the charter rights, because we were ordered back into classrooms that hadn't changed. We were given a legislated settlement that we had rejected by 85% at the end of September. That was the terms of our legislated settlement. And in my history on bargaining, I've been bargaining since my first year teaching. I was the secretary of the bargaining committee, actually, because my mentor teacher when I was a student teacher was the chair of the bargaining committee. And she's like, you take notes, you get to be here now. And I was like, all right. I've never actually seen a legislated settlement like this in Alberta. It was something that was not ideal. And the government in all of this had other options to do. But they chose the nuclear option. And part of the reason why they did that is on October 23rd, we had a rally outside the legislature when they had the throne speech. 35,000 Albertans showed up for that rally in Edmonton. 35,000. So as demoralizing as this was, as disrespectful as it was, and it still is, and I still carry a lot of anger with it, and a lot of emotion. We just had, we took it to court to an injunction, and we're a merits case in the fall. I'll talk about it in a moment. But when we got the ruling and we weren't successful at our injunction bid, I actually I had cried a little bit before I went out and did the media scrum, because the emotion is still there for a lot of our members. We're still carrying that. And I'm not ashamed to admit to that once in a while, because you just, we're people, we feel things, and it's okay to have that. So we filed a legal challenge, an injunction, as I just mentioned, but also a merits case beyond that. But also, as I'm talking to members, and we just had our teachers convention thing, Bill 2 stripped us of some charter rights, but it doesn't silence us. It doesn't say that we can't talk to the public about what's happening in our schools. Right? And a lot of teachers are disillusioned with a lot of things, with the bargaining process, with the association, with its leadership, with government, because they're feeling these big emotions, and they should. And I have no qualms about that. And but I always have to remind them that it doesn't matter that they did it, because it doesn't silence us. We still have our voice, and we can still use that voice. And I made sure I was right. I asked the lawyers, because I didn't want to go to rallies, because I've been asked to go to rallies after Bill 2. I was like, am I going to go to jail if I say something? They're like, no, you're fine. And I was like, oh, because I was looking forward to a little bit of a break, but whatever. Is what it is. So what we found post-strike, though, once we were ordered back, so we had huge public support going into the strike. So this will take you to a Leger poll that was done in November 2025, and I'm only going to hit on one of the slides. But all of these slides show that the public support for teachers and public education and the ATA increased after the strike, because the public was mad that the government did this. And so you saw within the polling, this one here, who handled the strike the most or the best. 6% increase of the ATA. Government, unfortunately, has a bit of a bump here, but a lot of people, when you break down the numbers and get into the nitty-gritty of it, we're happy to see kids go back to school after 3 weeks, and that's why the government had an increase on that. Just going to skip through those. Now, our government is special, because not only did we use the notwithstanding clause against teachers, they used it 3 more times in Bill 9. And this was to put measures around the fact that we had a bunch of anti-trans legislation come through, transgender bills that you can see there. There's 3 of them, Bill 26, 27, and 29. Bill 27 is more so for education. It says that if a transgender student wants to change their name or their pronouns, the teacher has to notify the parents. Yes. And my colleagues and myself, I'm not outing kids. It's just not going to happen on my time. And so we saw this not only for teachers, but also for these anti-transgender bills as well. And court challenges are moving ahead on those as well. So we did some surveying of our membership. We've been doing it for a while. It's called the Pulse Survey. And this will take you to the document right there. But we asked teachers about their experiences post-strike, but also what are the complexities that they're seeing in the classroom. Because complexities was a big part of our strike. Not only wages, but this as well. So you can see here that, social, emotional, behavioral, cognitive, ESL, EAL, and ELL students, and then social economics were the top complexities that we're seeing within our classrooms. And this might be your experience as well within your classrooms as well. I can pretty much guarantee that it is. And so one of the things that you find here with this as well, in the survey, in the initial part, is that 94% of the members who answered this survey are cynical, are pessimistic about the future of the teaching profession. And that's one of the aftermaths of the strike. So we're in the aftermath part of teachers going back to work. They're feeling it, right? They're exhausted. They're tired. They're disillusioned. They don't feel a lot of hope. But interesting within this data set that we have here, they're still finding moments of joy within their classrooms in the day, but they've got to look for them. So it feels pretty dark, but we're still working forward towards that. So we keep talking about complexity, because one of the things we were able to do during a strike was actually get the public to finally understand the nuances of the complexity issue, because we got to talk about it so much in the media. I did 100 interviews in October alone. I counted them up. And we talked about this every single time. So the public are aware of this now, and we're actually starting to see some movement by government. So I was expecting our budget that just came out in 2026 here in February on the 27th. I was expecting the bare minimum, maybe inflation, because that's what we've been getting every year. We're the least funded every single year. This year, we got a 7% increase to the public education budget. And the premier, and well, we can clap about that, but, that's the wrong way. Okay, I just didn't know what the red button was for. Anyways, on the left is Minister Nicolaides. On the right, that's Premier Smith, if you didn't know what she looked like. Yeah, it's okay. They both admitted at this press conference, because they had a pre-budget press conference, which I've not seen them do as well, on education to announce this funding. They both essentially admitted the teacher strike was a factor of the increase that you see here on the budget. The language within the budget talks about complex issues, about all of these different things that are there. So we needed to see a $560 million increase to budget 2026 for them to fulfill the promises that they made post-strike. And the budget for next year is $722 million. And so I was a little bit cheesed, because I was like, I might have to say something nice about the government. But as you can see me in the media scrum there at the rotunda, I didn't. So someday I'll be nice, but not today. Quite honestly, not till I get my rights back. And so one of the things that they also announced too is they stopped collecting class size data in 2019, because if you don't know the breadth and depth of the issue, you don't have to worry about it, right? It's effectively head and sand moment. Right? So we've been through bargaining saying we need class size and complexity data. It's one of the things that we talked about at the bargaining table. They wouldn't put it in the collective agreement, but they actually did start doing it. And then the data that they got, they created these complexity teams that are going into schools. They made this rating system, and the data that they had, there's 655 schools are deemed high priority, but they only gave 476 complexity teams to these schools. So there's a lot of work here to be done. They don't talk about grades 7 to 12. They didn't look at multi-grades like we have Hutterite Colony schools. Those aren't included in that as well. And so there's lots of gaps here, but it's a start. And we'll have to just see. We're a little skeptical about how this works, but we'll see how that goes. But again, they wouldn't have done this without the strike. Right? They just wouldn't have done that far. So of course we were in court last week, and then just yesterday we got the ruling from the judge. Of course we weren't successful in getting the injunction, but we were successful. There's 3 tests that we have to meet in order to get the injunction. The first one is this a serious issue that needs to be tried? The judge agrees, so we'll go to court again in September in the merits case to take this moving forward. We have lots of interest from unions across Alberta and Canada, here in Ontario especially, who want to be interveners on this case, because we're really trying to move the needle on this so that no government in Alberta uses the notwithstanding clause in a bargaining situation. You shouldn't get to have this get out of jail card free. Right? I almost swore, but I didn't. Sometimes my members like it when I swear, but I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to be professional today. There we go. All right. So this is sort of what's next. And I see the gang's coming back, so I got to wrap up here pretty quick. What's next for us. So we changed our ad campaign from Stop the Excuses to Progress, Not Promises, right? So the colors changed. We went into the red thing because the Red for Ed thing was really quite phenomenal. It took off like a wildfire. Parents, kids, all sorts of people were doing it. You guys are doing it. It's awesome. So we just, as people talk about, well, what's this ad campaign about? I don't know about you, but I am sick and tired of watching MLAs, elected officials, ministers of education, the Premier of Alberta stand at a podium and tell us and re-announce money, funding announcements time and time again. We're tired of the promises. We actually want to see action on those now. So Smith likes to say that we're going to put $8.6 billion into building schools. Great, build the damn things now. Right? They keep announcing them over and over and over again. Actually build them now. Build these schools that we need. They announced $300 million to address complexity issues in the next budget year, the 2026-27 school year. Okay, great. Actually get that money into classrooms, into schools, so that teachers are hired, EAs are hired, so that we've got people in the buildings. We talk about resources for schools and for kids. The number one resource at a school are the people who are sitting in this room. It's you. And we need more of you in our schools working with kids. Okay. So this is our new ad campaign. And of course, we've got all these other things because, why not just have all this other stuff going on at the same time? So we've got curriculum issues, assessment issues, or we're going to fast track teacher credentials because that's a Band-Aid that'll work. And we're going to start bargaining again next fall. We'll start doing our initial proposal planning with our members. We get into list bargaining in 2028. And then, of course, charter rights, and at some point we'll have a provincial election. And so the work just never stops. And so one of the things, and I'm going to wrap up here, I can see you're getting all sort of antsy over here. I see you in my peripheral. So a couple of years ago, I was at a teachers convention. It's the North Central Teachers Convention. It's NCTCA. And we had a keynote speaker. Her name was Candy Palmiter. And I'm not sure if anybody here is familiar with who Candy is. Yeah, she's fantastic. She said this quote at this thing, and this was 2020, before COVID, because I'm smiling. Before COVID. Before, I always used to tell people I used to be fun at some point. But Candy made this comment, and it's ingrained in my DNA, especially in the role that I have now, especially that you have in roles active within your locals, that you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be persistent, right? Sometimes perfect is the enemy of the good. Oh, we're not going to do this because, it's not perfect. It doesn't matter, right? If you're talking with people and you're trying to advocate and you're having one-on-one conversations and you screw up a stat or something like that, it doesn't matter. I'm not perfect. I just got 3 emails yesterday telling me about how imperfect I am, right? One called me a skinhead, and I've never been called that before in my life. Yeah. And I was like, that's a microaggression. Take that back. But anyways, I'm not going to reply to that one. But Candy just was this sort of idea that, the fight is worth it, right? The work that you do day in and day out with kids at your local, with your federation, it's worth it, and it matters. And so one of the things I'd like to do when I get to the end of any kind of speech, and I usually start this way as well, is that one of the things I've learned from working with our Indigenous Education Committee and the elders that we have there is this notion of gratitude. And I really try to ground myself in gratitude every day. And I'm not successful about it. Every day is not, rose-colored glasses. These are hard days. The strike was hard days. The aftermath is hard days. But it doesn't mean that we can't be grateful. And so I'm going to finish up my conversation here with you and just thank you for the work that you do for students, the work that you do for your colleagues, the work that you do in your communities, because teachers are the backbones of community, right? Your schools are safe places for kids. They're havens for people. And wherever you work in terms of the education system, from Alberta to you here in Ontario, thank you for the work that you do day in and day out, because it matters. And thank you for your time. And I think I'm going to wrap up here because you told me I was going to get grilled with questions. So there. So I managed to get through all of those slides. So thank you. Oh, sit down. Well, I didn't, thank you. That's very gracious of you. I didn't know I could put this on a teleprompter. Next, I made that all up, so there we go. All right. Questions?
Questions to President Schilling? We have, just so you know, we have 4 minutes.
4 Canadian minutes.
You can get a lot done in 4 minutes. Teachers and education workers can do it all, so.
That's right.
You don't need a card. If you would like to ask President Schilling questions, just please approach a microphone.
Microphone
I'll
4.
start on microphone
Sorry,
4.
I'm used to chairing my own AGM. Sorry. It's like microphone 4 over there. Let's go. So there we go. All right.
Thanks very much, comrade. Anthony Marco, Hamilton, Wentworth District 21. I know Brother Gil McGowan from the ATF as well, and I wonder if you could speak. I know you spoke a little bit about how other education sector affiliates lend support. I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit more as to support from the broader labor community, not just within Alberta, but across Canada.
No, that's a great question, and thank you for that. So the association is not affiliated with the Alberta Federation of Labor. We're affiliated with the Canadian Teachers Federation. But we do have what I like to commonly call Union Fight Club, but we actually call it the Common Front. And it's union leaders from healthcare, the Alberta Union of Public Employees, QP's there as well, the nurses are there, other healthcare workers are there. And university faculty associations as well. So lots of meetings around this time, lots of support from them as well, moving through the strike and, support during and after as well. And so it's a relationship and a meeting that we have that is really valuable in Alberta because it gives us an opportunity as union leaders to sit down, know what other people are doing in terms of their bargaining, because our government had the secret mandate, which wasn't so secret because we were all talking together at a table about what each of us were seeing at our bargaining tables, and we were able to connect a lot of those dots together. So there was lots of support with that. So thanks. And I would encourage you to do that if you're not talking to other unions, and I'm assuming that you are, because everybody does, but it was really helpful through everything that we did.
I'm going to go to, this will be our last question too, microphone 3. Please go ahead.
Poirier, District 26. You talked a little bit about your navigating very dark times and losing rights and the sort of ongoing struggle. How do you as a leader find hope? How do you lead with optimism in times that are very dark?
That's a dissertation question. So we're going to be here till 7. No. That's a really great question. And there's actually a psychologist who lives in, I think she's outside of Peterborough, Robin Hanley Defoe. I don't know if you know who she is. So Robin has done a lot of work with the association, and the teleprompter's in the way. I can't quite see you. I was really fortunate, and I had the picture in my slide, but I took it out, to see Robin speak in person in Alberta about a week after we were ordered back. And I was feeling pretty miserable. But she had this reminder to the audience there, because it was all teachers that were there. The teachers are built to be resilient. We're built to have grit. And she talked about hope, and it's like, it seems kind of airy-fairy to talk about hope. But she also talked about this notion that hope is a choice that we make, right? So like you, every day I get up, I get dressed, I put my shoes on, and I just hope I'm going to make a difference that day, right? And you just hope that you're going to move forward. And it's, as I've been saying to our members who are in this very sort of wide spectrum of where they are post-strike, some are very angry still, right? And some more want to just move past it. We all deal with, it's kind of a grieving process after the strike. We'll deal with it differently. So I'm not there to tell members how to do it, but I'm also there to make sure that there's hope there, that we're going to keep fighting. Yeah, we lost the injunction, but we're going to keep fighting. We have all these things that are going on. We're going to keep fighting. Government wants to do something that's dumb. We're going to fight that too, and we're going to do it together. Solidarity is really key in all of that, and that would be a message I would send to you guys as well, that solidarity and that hope of working towards something together is really, really important. So thanks.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Executive Officer Chandler.
Thank you. Go.
you. I'll say a quick word of thank you.
Oh,
Stick
okay,
around.
thank you.